I've helped thousands of people open LLCs in the US, open US companies, understand how to file tax returns, what taxes they need to pay, how to protect themselves legally. And I talk about this all the time, both from a US domestic and an international perspective. And since I focus on so much cross-border taxation, that's what I'm going to talk about. And that's generally what my audience is on YouTube. So if you're doing international stuff or you're an international person, this video is going to be for you, and I'm going to tell you what you need to know before you open an LLC. It's really important stuff. And even if you are just in the US, if you have aspirations of going abroad or doing things abroad, I'd encourage you to watch this video because these are all practical things that you should know as well. So this is an all-encompassing, all-in-one video that's under 10 minutes long. I'm saying this at the beginning so that you can get all the information you need, knowing what you need to know before opening an LLC. And this is different than other videos I've been studying on the topic. First of all, I want to give you context. LLCs are disregarded entities. LLCs don't pay taxes on their own. If you open an LLC or if 3 people open an LLC, it's not going to pay income taxes by default on its own. The owners pay the taxes. You can make elections to have them pay taxes, but that's one of the beautiful things about the LLCs. They're so flexible, they're so quick to open, and they give you access to bank accounts and tools and so many awesome things that it really makes sense to have it if you have a business. But there's some things you really need to know. I'm gonna get into these 5 things right now. So number 1, when you're setting up the LLC, it's important to pick the right state. I know there's so many videos about choosing the right state for the LLC, but it comes down to this really quickly. You should start based first on where you live. If you live in Florida, you probably should open a Florida LLC. If you live in Massachusetts, probably should have a Massachusetts LLC. If you live abroad, then you can go with Wyoming or Delaware or Nevada or South Dakota has been popular, or Florida, but it really depends on what your purpose is and what you're trying to do. Those states are generally anonymous states. If you're opening a brokerage account, it's sometimes easier to use a state like Florida that publicly lists you as the owner because it's sometimes harder to open accounts when you have an LLC in a state where the ownership is private because you need to prove you own the company first. So depending on what you're trying to do, it might make sense to use a state like Florida where the ownership is public because it'll be easier to open the accounts. So it depends really what you're trying to do. If you're running a business and you're from a friendly country like the UK, you probably won't have a problem opening an online bank account. But if you're from Kazakhstan, which isn't necessarily a restricted country, but it's like a lesser known country, it might make sense to be in a public state like Florida to get the accounts open. A bonus here is I would always use a registered agent, and I would also try and avoid using your home address if you live in the US as the LLC business address because you don't need people to know where you live. You don't use the registered agent as your business address. A registered agent is theirs, and then you need a virtual office or something for your business address. That's definitely what I would do and what I advise all my clients to do. Unless you have a real business address, like if you have an office, use that, it's fine. Number 2, not considering the type of income and where the business operates. So from more of an international context, I'm going to break it down into like 3 different sections here. So if you have, I guess generally an education, a service, or e-com, if you're a foreign person, it's probably best with a single or multi-member LLC. If you are doing it online, if you're doing it in the US and you have a US store, it's probably best to have an LLC taxed as a corporation. If you're going to have employees in the US, if you're going to have an office, if you're going to open a retail store like a shoe store, it's probably best to have an LLC taxed as a corporation. Or if you're doing it all online, an LLC or a multi-member LLC. That's for foreign people. For Americans, just start with a regular LLC in the state you live. If you're going to be moving abroad, an S-Corp might not be worth it, but if you're going to be in the US, you can make an election later to decide if you want to be taxed as an S-Corp. If it's passive income, it's the same for foreign people. It's basically single member LLC. If you have partners who are in the US, it gets complicated where you might want to use a multi-member LLC or a corporation, but it really depends. And if you're an American, for passive income, you want it to be a regular LLC, not an S-Corp. S-Corps can't have passive income, and generally you don't want a passive income in a C-Corp. So a regular LLC, and that's like rental income. That's generally rental income. And if you're going to do rental income and real estate investments, I have many videos about that for foreign people, but the answer is almost always open the LLC before you buy the property, put the property in the name of the LLC, and then contact an attorney or a tax advisor, CPA or someone to figure out the rest because it's very complicated and it's nuanced, but you need the LLC open before because you don't want to have it in your name and then transfer it. It messes up the privacy and sometimes it messes up the loans and everything. Now, for portfolio income, a regular LLC is fine, it's passed through, but capital gains are already tax preferred. So if you're foreign, we don't want a C Corp. An LLC or multi-member LLC is fine, and you're going to pay long-term, or you're going to pay no income taxes on capital gains as a foreign person. And as an American or U.S. citizen, you want to pay taxes at long-term capital gains rates personally. So either in a personal account or a single member or multi-member LLC is fine. So you can open an LLC for that, but you don't want to commingle. You don't want an active business with investment income. If you can keep it separate, it's better for different reasons. Number 3, applying for the EIN incorrectly, and then also not using your EIN for business expenses. So you really need to operate out of a business account. You need that employer identification number. It's the number for your company it'll always have. It's connected to your company. It's really important to get the EIN because you need it for all accounts. It's like the tax ID for your company. You need it forever. When I say applying incorrectly, you need to indicate whether it's a multi-member LLC or a single member LLC on the application, because the IRS will expect different tax forms when you do the application. It's on Form SS4. I have a couple videos explaining how to complete the form. And if you're an American, you can just apply for the EIN online, but it's going to, I also have videos about how to do that, but it's going to ask what kind of entity it is. It's going to be a limited liability company, but it's going to have different tax indications. Number 4, not knowing which types of tax forms to use. And this is where I have the most experience as a CPA, advising clients on this all the time. So first, by default, for an American or a foreign person, if you're going to pay tax on your LLC operations, just you open an LLC, you would pay tax on a Schedule C on your Form 1040. If you're a foreign person, only if you have a U.S. trade or business will you pay tax on your U.S. source income, and that would still be a Schedule C, but attached to a Form 1040 NR. It's very unlikely, and it's just uncommon for that to happen. I don't work with many people who should pay taxes. I work with more people who file taxes with bad advice, and then we get refunds, we get the money back, than people who should have filed that way in the first place. But for an American, for me, if I open an LLC, I'm filing Schedule C and I'm paying tax on it. If you're an American only, you can elect S Corp tax election. That means your company is still pass through, and your distributions are not subject to self-employment taxes. On a Schedule C, all of the income is subject to the 14.3% self-employment tax, all of it. So if you make $100,000, there's a $14,300 self-employment tax. But with an S corporation, if you make $100,000, you need to pay yourself a reasonable compensation, a real W-2, a real payroll provider, and you say you pay yourself $60,000, you say that's reasonable. That means you're only paying that $14,000 on $60,000, and you're saving 14.3% on the remaining $40,000. This is really only necessary for Americans and only available for Americans as well. That's U.S. tax residents, U.S. citizens, and you have to file a Form 1120 by March 15th every year, and that's to report your income and expenses. The payroll forms are separate. I'm not going to talk about those. If you make a corporate tax election, you file Form 1120. That's a corporate tax return. That's taxed on worldwide income, and it's subject to U.S. income taxes at a flat rate of 21%. There are also states that charge corporate taxes as well. The states that don't are generally going to be South Dakota, Wyoming, Delaware, Nevada, maybe New Mexico. But the first 4 for certain. This is subject to tax. Again, foreign people are only going to use a corporate tax election when you are doing business in the U.S., or maybe you have U.S. partners and you want to be more formal and you maybe need to get investments from venture capitalists. Now, for the rest of the people, if you have an LLC with more than one owner, it is taxed as a partnership and files Form 1065 by March 15th of every year. You can request a 6-month extension by filing Form 7004. Actually, the 7004 requests an extension for all of these entities. So the 1065 reports income and expenses and attributes the results of the activity between the partners using Schedules K1, which are attached to the Form 1065. I know I'm talking quick. Pause the video and rewind it, or comment below if you have a question. I'm trying to get to the comments. If you are a foreign person and it's a single member LLC, you have to file a pro forma 1120 and attach a Form 5472, which is going to be, has to be faxed to the IRS. I have many videos about that, but that's due on April 15th, along with the Schedule C, I guess the 1040 and the 1120. The LLC can, by default, files a Schedule C, or if you're foreign, an 1120 5472. But if you have more than one owner, it's a 1065, or if you are an American and make an election on Form 2553, you'll file a Form 1120S. Or if you're foreign or U.S. domestic, you can make an election on Form 8832 to be taxed as a corporation. There's also, starting in 2024, the beneficial ownership information report with FinCEN that has to be filed. Check that video on my channel. That's not out yet until January 1st. We can't file the first form, so I can't show you how to file that yet, but it's going to be on the FinCEN website, and if you open your LLC before 2024, you have until the end of the year of 2024 to file that report. You need to be able to have W-9s and W-8 bens or W-8 BENEs available for people who are paying you, especially people paying you in the U.S. So if you're an American with a Schedule C, an 1120S, an 1120, or a 1065, you can complete a Form W-9. I have a video on how to complete that also on the channel. And if you're a foreign person who owns an LLC, you would complete a W-8 BEN. And that would show you're not a U.S. person. Finally, the last one here that you need to know before opening your LLC is that you need to follow the right steps with your LLC to protect yourself legally. And I know I left this to last, but this is very important. The first thing is you need an operating agreement. The operating agreement governs how the LLC operates. You sign it as the owner, you sign it as a member. It shows how you're going to interact with your partners. You need it for every LLC. It's super important. You also need separate bank accounts. You need to operate only in the LLC bank account. You should be doing LLC minutes. You should be doing documents and documenting the meetings you have and to see how the LLC is going to be moving forward and how it's operating. Whenever you sign anything, sign as the owner of the LLC, James Baker, president of James Baker LLC. And you should definitely keep, like I said, use a proper registered agent. Doing these things are essential in keeping you from being legally liable and having the corporate veil pierced and being liable for things your LLC does. So, in summary, that's what you need to know when you have an LLC. Setting up the right state, knowing what kind of entity to operate in, probably getting legal advice, tax advice, depending on how your entity is going. Really, if you want to start with a basic LLC and just get going like that, it's not the worst idea, but just watch this video a couple of times. You need an EIN. It's essential. Get the right kind of EIN. You need to know what kind of tax forms to file. Watch that back because I went over it in detail. I explained it all. And if you have a question, comment below. Next, watch this video about the Corporate Transparency Act. I just put it out last week. I spent a lot of time on it. Check it out. It's going to explain the laws about that. Every single LLC owner has to file this for every single LLC. So check that out. See you on the next video. I appreciate you. I'm sorry I went over 10 minutes. Have a great day. Love you guys.